Hi Reaper friends, I've been gone for almost a year and honestly I wasn't able to use Reaper that much. So I thought it would be fun if we catch up together with some of the latest features that I'm so excited to try out. Alright, let's start with one of my favorite features and it's the ability to pin tracks at the top of the TCP. So you know those sessions where you have like 200 tracks or just, I don't know, just a bunch of tracks and you want to keep track of one track at all times. Maybe it's a reference track, maybe it's a MIDI track that you always want to see at the top. Now it's super easy to do. So let's just do this track as an example. I'm just gonna color it red just so we can see it. And the way to do this, it's super simple. All you need to do is just right click on the track and select pin tracks to the top of the range view. So now, no matter how far you scroll, you're always gonna have that track at the top and it's just so convenient because you can directly work on there. And at the same time, you still have a full view of your session. You can scroll and do all of the things you normally do, and you can have this track at all times at the top. One of my favorite ways to use this is pinning the drum track at the top, and this is super convenient for editing because I can always see the drums, all the MIDI notes in there, and I can tightly edit. Also for recording, I love having, for example, maybe I'm recording just guitars and drums, I'm gonna pin those as well. And this has become my favorite way to record anything. I used to hide all of the other tracks and just have the drums and the guitar, for example, if I'm recording just those. But this gives me a full view of the project while also having focus on the parts I want to record that are always going to stay at the top. I really enjoy it for that. Another thing I've seen some people do is creating a chord track and pinning that at the top. I thought it was pretty cool. So the way you do that is you create a new track and let's just call it word track. And let's just color it different so you can see. And you will pin this track at the top. And the way to insert the chords, you will be making a time selection by clicking and dragging and then going to insert new empty item, and then you will have this block in here. You would double click on that and let's just type F major. Maybe this is an F major chord, I don't even know. Make sure that it says stretch tats and then hit apply, and now you have this big block that says the name of the chord of that section. So maybe this is G major, and then you can also copy this. And the cool thing is that since it's pinned at the top, you will always see it right there. You can now use curves on your tempo map. Let's say that I have these drums right here. I want it to go from fast to really slow, but in a smooth way. So here's how it sounds without doing anything. Then I want it slow in that part. And the way we do that is by holding Shift plus C, and that creates this window right here where you can set the tempo that you want or the time signature you want to change or anything. So right now I wanted to keep it at 170, so I'm just gonna place that tempo marker over there. And then I'm gonna go to the part that I want to slow down, and I'm gonna do the same thing, Shift C. And in here I'm gonna type 100 BPM. That's how I want it. So if I do it right now, it's not as satisfying. But if we do this little trick, we go to the view menu and open up the master track. Now that we have the master track in here, we're gonna click on the automation button, and it looks like this in the Reapertips theme, and it looks like this in the default theme. It's gonna open up this window, and then you find tempo map, go to the visible column, and just click on there. And now the tempo map is visible at the master track. So this is gonna make it really handy to make tempo changes. But the cool thing that I wanna show you is that you can now click anywhere between these two tempo markers while holding Alt and clicking and dragging like this, and it's gonna create a curve for your tempo map. So it's gonna gradually transition into the next tempo however you want it. So if you want a fast start or slow end. So let's see how this sounds like. So let's start first with something straightforward. Okay, not quite there. I kind of wanna have a fast start and then just gradually get slower and slower. Now that's good. Now that's good. I love this. And you can also just right click on one of them and set the shape that you want in here. This next one is so nice, especially if you're recording guitars in Reaper or any other instrument and you have a bunch of plugins and some of them are introducing latency, which is the worst thing to have. So right now, if I'm playing guitar, I have this awful latency that I cannot record anything with this. So usually I will have to go and disable all of the plugins that are introducing latency, like my limiters or any multiband processing. And you will usually find this in the track manager, and you will see this number right here. That's how much latency the plugins in these tracks are introducing. But now we have this option that you can find in preferences in the audio tab that is called auto bypass effects on record arm, and I have this to 3 milliseconds. I find that's a good sweet spot. When we enable this and hit apply, you will see that when I arm this track to record, it's gonna automatically bypass any plugin that is introducing latency to my project. So my guitar should be much better. So every time I try to record, it's gonna bypass all of those automatically. And best of all, if I stop recording, it's gonna put all of them back to the project. Such a good preference. Another quality of life improvement is that you can now see a little progress bar on your splash screen when there's a project loading or anything loading in Reaper. And by the way, if you want that awesome splash screen that I have, you can have it with the Reapertips theme, and it's very easy to set up. You will go to Preferences and go to Advanced UI System Tweaks, and in here you will set the path of the splash screen that I included in the theme folder. The next one is really helpful if you're doing any guitar editing, sample editing, drum editing, or anything that involves using a crossfade, because let me tell you, Reaper is so good with crossfades and editing in general. Let me show you all the cool things that you can do with this. So for example, I got this guitar plugin here and a guitar plug plus detailing, and I want to merge those two. I will grab one of the items and start to merge them like that. And you will see the crossfade starting to happen in there. And with this crossfade, you can do a lot of things. So you can, of course, adjust the edges however you want. And you will always see the waveforms updating. And one of the things you can do is that you can hold shift and click and drag in here to move the crossfade around. But also you can hold alt and click and drag to adjust the shape of each of the fades. So maybe you wanna have something like this, and you will see the waveform is always updating, so it's really nice and visual to see what's going on in there. But what they just added just elevated this thing to a whole new level. Now you can double click on this and get this crossfade editor that just has so much control over this. So now you have a much finer control and a really nice visual where you see one in green and one in red. You can move it around and start to, maybe you want to match the phase, maybe you want to match the gain. You will control here and then move this around, and then you can even preview it from here. And that sounds pretty good to me. But yeah, this thing is amazing, and it will also tell you how aligned the face is. So right now it's at -5%, so it's a pretty bad job. So the closer it is, the higher the percentage. So you can also help yourself with this face align button. And maybe you want the right item position to face align with the left one. So that's just gonna do such a good job. Look at that. It's so good. This thing is amazing. So if you're into sample editing and all that, yeah, this thing is life-changing. Speaking of fades, we also got this crazy update where you can have your normal fade-ins and fade-out, and it's just gonna sound like this. It's increasing the volume over time, you know, like normal. But now you can right-click on the fade and select low pass fade. And this not only will increase the volume over time, but it's also opening up a filter. a low pass filter where all the low sounds are gonna sound first and then it's just gonna open up for the full sound and it sounds just like this. Super cool. And I also love this for fade outs, and you can do the same thing and just right clicking here. And by the way, you can choose, if you right click on the fade, you can choose any of these shapes. For fade outs, I usually like this one. I think it sounds pretty good. And you can also audition all of the shapes by just simply clicking Command or Control on Windows and clicking on the fade, and this will go through all of the different shapes if you want to try them out that way. Another really awesome update is that when you render a file like this, you get to see a bunch of really useful information. For example, this red line that you see here, that's a loudness. So you can hover your mouse like this and see exactly how loud each section is in case you're doing any mastering and just have a reference. But one of my favorite things now is that you can actually press anywhere in here and then press the play button and it's gonna play your render file. So you can actually listen to the render file right from here. You can also make a time selection and loop a section. For example, I want to play from here to here, and that's gonna loop from there to there. That's just such a cool thing, honestly. Now, another thing, I'm gonna disable the limiter, and I'm gonna increase the master fader just to show you something. So I'm gonna select the burst and some of the curves, and then do the render dialog, and in here I'm gonna do the time selection balance and dry run, no output. This is gonna be super helpful to see if I'm clipping somewhere. As soon as you start clipping somewhere in your project, you're gonna see these little red lines, and it's just so helpful to actually see like where exactly you're clipping. And you can even just press where you want it and press M, and that's gonna drop a marker. So I'm gonna just drop markers whenever I have a clip in so I can later check in the project. But yeah, the render dialog in Reaper 7 has been amazing, just so convenient to do all of this from here. Another great addition to editing is that you can now ripple edit the edges of the item. But what even is ripple edit? Let me just show you that real quick. So let's say that you're doing some dialogue editing and you want to close these gaps between sentences. So what you would do is just make a split at the end and at the start of the next sentence. And so you have this little gap in here. The best way to go about this is to enable ripple editing, which is this icon on the toolbar that you see right here. When you activate this and then you delete any of these items, it's gonna shift everything back to the next item. So this is a very convenient way to close the gaps. So you keep doing this and anything that you delete, it's always gonna shift back to the next item. Now my favorite way to go about this is razor edits, and you do them by holding shift plus alt and then right click drag like this. It should create this little nice outline of where you want the cut, and I just keep doing that for all of the little gaps in here. And you can do this real quick like this, and then once you have all of those, just press delete and boom, all of the gaps are closed. Now there's a little problem. What if you wanted even more space in between these takes? The old way was that you had to move this around like that and then increase that gap and then put that back to how you want it. But now with this new feature, you can right click on the ripple edit toolbar and then enable ripple edit when editing media item edges. And now with that enabled, I can grab the right edge of the item and click and drag it, and everything's gonna move with it. So that's a really nice way to add some space, or maybe remove some space. Maybe you wanna trim it like that, and maybe you wanna trim this one like this. Everything's gonna shift back. Just so nice to have that enabled. So some of you may not know this, but if you go to view and then click on Peaks Display Settings, there's a list of all the different ways that you can see your peaks. You got spectral peaks, where you can see all the different frequencies based on the color spectrum right here. But there's also a spectrogram, and this thing is incredible. So right away you wouldn't notice that there's a really high pitched sound going through all the recording, but if we switch to the spectrogram, we see this really annoying line that is just ruining the recording. The good thing is that it's very easy to fix in Reaper without having to use isotope RADs or any specialized tool. And by the way, this is a problem. And this is how the audio sounds like. You hear that super high pitched sound? We can get rid of this very easily by right-clicking on the item, selecting spectral edits, and add a spectral edit to item. This box is gonna show up, and all we need to do is just target that really annoying line right there. And then there's this gain knob that you can use it to turn down that noise. So when you play it, and this is how the audio sounds like, that's much better, a huge improvement. So with the newest update, you can select these 3 dots in here and select show high resolution spectrogram when zoomed in. So selecting this is gonna make all of the spectrogram look way better. Like this is I don't know why this is not the default, but yeah, it looks so much better this way. And you can of course adjust the contrast, the brightness and all of this, but it's now much more detailed. The next update is something very thoughtful. I don't know if this ever happened to you, but maybe you're in the mixer, you're trying to click some tracks, you're going one by one and you try to boom, this happens. You accidentally click on one of these areas of the fader and it just boosts the volume to the maximum. It just blast your ears and it's the worst. That has happened to me so many times and I hate it. I hate that you can click on any of these black lines and the fader is just gonna jump that way. That is not natural. That is not how faders work. Like this is so dangerous. So now you can totally prevent that from doing that. If you go to Reaper preferences here at the mouse section, there's this new option that says ignore mouse click unless directly on fader handle. This lifesaver. So you hit apply and now even if you press anywhere in the black lines, nothing's gonna move unless you touch the fader and drag it down. That's the way it should work, right? I think that whole thing is so dangerous because sometimes you're selecting tracks and you can even select tracks from this position. So yeah, it's just much better this way. The next update is something I don't see myself using that much, but I think game audio people and also mastering people, STEM mastering people too can appreciate. Now you can drag and drop folders into Reaper and it's gonna import all of the subfolders as folders in Reaper. So let's try to drag this folder sound effects into this. Importing over 1,000 files, continue. Sure. So yeah, this pretty much should match the hierarchy that you have in your Finder. So pressing OK, it's gonna import all of those sounds. Let's see how long this takes. It's over 1,000 files, so I might expect maybe a minute or two. Oh, okay, there you go. Just did it. It's amazing. Let's see how many. Ooh, that's 1,300 files. Okay, but there you go. It's a bunch of subfolders with a folder with every little WAV file. So now I have all of the folders in here and I can collapse all of them, maybe open one of them like that. Now last and maybe least, let's talk about the elephant in this room. This little button right here that appeared some versions ago and people either hate it or love it. I don't know how I feel about it. I think it could have been done a little cleaner, but I mean, it's very useful. I think when you first open up Reaper, it's not that intuitive to understand how to create a new track. So having this button in here is intuitive. I think people will press this and be like, oh. But if you don't like it, it's very easy to remove. And if you do like it and want to expand on it, you can also do that because this is a toolbar just like any other. You can right click on this and say customize toolbar. If you don't like this, you can just simply select this and select remove and hit apply and it's gone forever. You don't need to worry about that. But if you want it back, you will put it from here and select apply. Now you can keep adding things just like any other toolbar. So for example, what if we add spacer? So maybe this one, insert visual spacer before last touch track. Let's select that, close this, and then select this, and let's add an icon to it. Maybe something like this one could be good. Let's apply that, and now you can see there's this icon now in here. So if we want to add a spacer, we can always press this button and it's gonna add a spacer right there. So I think that could be helpful. I mean, you could also have it in here, but it's just another toolbar space and you can use it however you want. And that's it. There's still a lot of updates that I didn't go through. These were the ones that I read the changelog and I said, I'll talk about that someday. And that day came. Here we are. Very happy to be doing videos again. Let me know what you want me to talk about, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.